the most mysterious Christian relics in history. For nearly 2,000 years, people have searched for physical objects connected to Jesus Christ, his crucifixion, and the earliest days of Christianity. Some of these relics are protected inside famous cathedrals. Others disappeared during wars, invasions, or political conflict. A few have been examined by scientists, while many survive mainly through tradition and legend. To believers, they can be powerful reminders of faith and sacrifice. To historians, they reveal how devotion, storytelling, and power shaped the Christian world. But every relic raises the same question: is it genuine? Or did it become sacred because generations of people believed in its story? Perhaps the most famous of all is the Holy Grail. It is usually described as the cup Jesus used during the Last Supper. Some later traditions even claimed that it was used to collect his blood during the crucifixion. The New Testament describes Jesus sharing a cup with his disciples, but it never calls that cup the Holy Grail or explains what happened to it afterward. The Grail became famous centuries later through medieval stories, especially the legends of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. In these tales, it could heal sickness, provide endless nourishment, or grant divine favor. Yet the Grail was more than a magical object. It represented purity, faith, and the difficult search for something holy. Sir Galahad was often portrayed as the only knight spiritually worthy enough to find it. Different churches and locations have claimed to possess the true cup. One well-known candidate is a stone chalice kept in Valencia Cathedral in Spain. It is certainly old, but there is no reliable proof that it belonged to Jesus. Some people believe the Grail was never meant to be a real object at all. It may instead symbolize spiritual enlightenment, divine grace, or humanity's desire to reach the sacred. Whether it began as a real cup or a medieval symbol, the Holy Grail remains one of history's greatest religious mysteries. A far stranger relic is the Holy Prepuce, also known as the Holy Foreskin. The Gospel of Luke says that Jesus was circumcised 8 days after his birth. During the Middle Ages, several churches claimed that the tissue removed during that ceremony had somehow survived. At one point, more than 20 locations claimed to possess it. These competing claims attracted pilgrims and caused arguments between churches. They also raised uncomfortable theological questions. If Christ had risen bodily and ascended into heaven, what did that mean for a part of his body removed during infancy? One legend claimed that the relic was once given to Charlemagne and later presented to Pope Leo III. The best-known version was kept in the Italian town of Calcutta, where it appeared in public processions for centuries. Then, in 1983, it mysteriously disappeared. No one knows whether it was stolen, hidden, or quietly removed to end the controversy. Far more respected and carefully studied is the Shroud of Turin. This long linen cloth carries the faint front and back image of a man who appears to have been crucified. Marks on the body seem to show injuries to the hands or wrists, feet, head, back, and side. Because these wounds resemble the gospel descriptions of Jesus' suffering, many Christians believe the cloth may have wrapped his body after death. The shroud first appears clearly in the historical record in 14th century France. It was later moved to Turin, Italy. Its most remarkable feature became widely known after it was photographed in 1898. When the photographic negative was developed, the faint image appeared with far greater detail, almost like a portrait. From that moment, the shroud became not only a religious relic, but also a scientific puzzle. In 1988, radiocarbon tests dated the linen to the medieval period, between the 13th and 14th centuries. Many researchers took this as evidence that the shroud was not from the time of Jesus. Supporters challenged the result, arguing that the tested sample may have come from a repaired or contaminated section. Since then, experts have studied its fibers, stains, pollen, image formation, and possible blood traces. Yet, no one has reached a final agreement about how the image was created. The Catholic Church has never officially declared the shroud authentic, but it recognizes its spiritual importance. Another object associated with the crucifixion is the Holy Lance, also called the Spear of Longinus. The Gospel of John says that a Roman soldier pierced Jesus in the side to confirm that he was dead. The Bible does not name the soldier, but later tradition called him Longinus. Some stories say that contact with the blood of Christ led to his conversion. Several weapons have been claimed as the true lance. One famous example is kept in Vienna. Another tradition connects a lance fragment with Rome, while a separate spearhead was discovered at Antioch during the First Crusade. Believed its discovery was a miraculous sign, and it raised their morale during a desperate moment. Later legends claimed that whoever possessed the spear could not be defeated. Charlemagne, medieval emperors, and even Adolf Hitler became connected to stories about its power, although much of this belongs to legend rather than reliable history. Scientific examinations have never proved that any surviving lance came from 1st century Jerusalem. The true cross is said to be the actual cross on which Jesus was crucified. According to Christian tradition, Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine, traveled to Jerusalem in the 4th century and discovered it near the site of Calvary. Some versions of the story say that 3 crosses were found. The correct one was identified when it brought about a miraculous healing. Fragments said to come from the cross were later distributed across the Christian world. Kings, bishops, monasteries, and churches treasured even the smallest piece. These fragments were placed inside gold and jeweled containers, carried in processions, and sometimes taken into battle. The large number of claimed pieces eventually caused skepticism. Critics joked that there was enough wood to build a ship. Defenders replied that the total amount was actually much smaller. No test can prove that any surviving fragment came from the cross of Jesus. But for believers, the relic represents the sacrifice at the center of Christianity. The Crown of Thorns carries a similar meaning. The Gospels describe Roman soldiers placing a crown made from thorns on Jesus' head while mocking him as the King of the Jews. Tradition says that the crown was preserved in Jerusalem, taken to Constantinople, and later acquired by the French king Louis IX. He built the magnificent Sainte-Chapelle in Paris to house it. Over the centuries, many thorns were removed and given to churches and rulers. The main surviving relic is now a circular woven band rather than a complete crown covered in thorns. It was preserved at Notre Dame Cathedral and rescued during the devastating fire of 2019. Its authenticity cannot be scientifically confirmed, but its symbolism is clear. It represents humiliation, pain, and the contrast between earthly power and the kind of kingship Christians believe Jesus represented. Less famous, but equally mysterious, is the Sudarium of Oviedo. A sudarium was a cloth used to cover the face. This linen, preserved in northern Spain, carries no human image. Instead, it contains bloodstains and other bodily fluids. Tradition identifies it as the cloth placed over Jesus' face after the crucifixion, before his body was wrapped for burial. Researchers have compared its stains with those on the Shroud of Turin. Some believe the patterns are compatible and may suggest that both cloths covered the same person at different moments. Others argue that the evidence is too uncertain. The cloth has an old history, but it cannot be traced clearly back to 1st century Jerusalem. For pilgrims, however, the Sudarium is not simply a scientific mystery. It is a reminder of the physical suffering described in the Passion story. The Veil of Veronica belongs even more clearly to Christian tradition. According to the story, a woman named Veronica stepped from the crowd as Jesus carried his cross towards Calvary. Moved by compassion, she offered him a cloth to wipe his face. When he returned it, the image of his face had miraculously appeared on the fabric. This event is not found in the Bible, but it became one of the best-known scenes in the Stations of the Cross. Several churches claim to possess the original veil. One famous image was displayed at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, although its later history is uncertain. Another cloth in Monopello, Italy, is sometimes identified as Veronica's veil. It is a delicate, almost transparent fabric bearing the image of a face. Testing has not settled its age or origin. Whether the story is historical or devotional, its message remains powerful. In the middle of public cruelty, one person chose compassion. The holy nails are also connected to Helena's journey to Jerusalem. Christian art does not always agree on how many nails were used in the crucifixion. Some images show 4, with each hand and foot nailed separately. Others show 3, with one nail passing through both feet. Medieval legends said that Helena discovered the original nails together with the true cross. One nail was said to have been placed in Constantine's helmet, another in the equipment of his horse, and another inside the Iron Crown of Lombardy. Today, churches across Europe preserve many objects identified as holy nails. There are far more than could have been used in one crucifixion, so most are likely replicas, fragments, or objects that touched an earlier relic. Their meaning remains powerful because nails are ordinary objects. In the crucifixion story, a simple piece of iron becomes a symbol of violence and sacrifice. Relics said to contain the blood of Christ have also attracted devotion for centuries. One of the most famous is kept in Bruges, Belgium, inside the Basilica of the Holy Blood. Tradition says that Joseph of Arimathea collected some of Jesus' blood, and that the relic later reached Bruges after the Crusades. It is preserved in a crystal vial and displayed during an annual procession that attracts thousands of people. Historians question the early story, and some suggest that the vial may originally have contained perfume or another substance. Scientific verification is difficult because testing could damage the relic. For Christians, however, the blood of Christ is more than a physical object. It is central to ideas of sacrifice, forgiveness, and the Eucharist. The relic therefore represents both a historical claim and a much larger spiritual belief. The Image of Edessa, also known as the Mandylion, is one of the oldest legendary images of Jesus. According to tradition, King Abgar of Edessa became seriously ill and sent a message asking Jesus to heal him. In later versions, Jesus pressed his face against a cloth, leaving a miraculous image, and sent it to the king. When Abgar received it, he was healed or began to recover. The image became one of the most important sacred objects in the Eastern Christian world. It was transferred to Constantinople in the year 944 and displayed with great ceremony. After the Fourth Crusade attacked the city in 1204, the relic disappeared. Some researchers have suggested that the Mandylion and the Shroud of Turin were actually the same cloth, folded so that only the face could be seen. It is an interesting theory, but it has never been proven. The story reflects an early Christian desire to know what Jesus looked like, and to believe that his face had been preserved without the hand of an artist. Finally, beneath St. Peter's Basilica in Rome lies one of Christianity's greatest archaeological mysteries, the possible tomb and bones of the Apostle Peter. Christian tradition says that Peter was executed in Rome during the persecution of Emperor Nero. Later accounts say he was crucified upside down because he did not consider himself worthy to die in the same manner as Jesus. He was then buried near Vatican Hill. In the 4th century, Emperor Constantine built the first St. Peter's Basilica over the location believed to contain Peter's grave. During 20th century excavations beneath the modern basilica, archaeologists uncovered an ancient Roman cemetery, a memorial structure, graffiti referring to Peter, and a collection of bones. After years of investigation, Pope Paul VI announced in 1968 that the remains had been identified in a way the Church considered convincing. Not every scholar agreed, and the evidence could not prove the identity of the bones with complete certainty. Even with those doubts, the site is historically extraordinary. It shows that early Christians honored a burial place connected with Peter long before Christianity became the religion of the Roman Empire. For the Catholic Church, Peter represents apostolic authority and continuity. Whether every bone can be proven to belong to him or not, the site preserves a link between the persecuted Christians of ancient Rome and one of the largest churches ever built. These relics exist in the uncertain space between history and belief. Some may be ancient objects whose story survived. Others may be medieval creations, mistaken identities, or symbols that became more important than their physical origins. Science can examine cloth, wood, metal, stains, and bone, but it cannot always explain why an object has inspired devotion for hundreds of years. Perhaps that is why these relics continue to fascinate us. The Holy Grail represents the search for the divine. The Shroud and the Sudarium confront us with suffering and death. The crown, nails, lance, and cross transform instruments of cruelty into symbols of sacrifice. The Veil of Veronica remembers compassion, while the possible remains of Peter connect a small persecuted movement with a worldwide faith. We may never know which of these objects are authentic, yet their stories have already shaped art, politics, pilgrimage, literature, and Christian devotion across centuries. Somewhere between evidence and legend, they continue to ask a timeless question. How much of history can be held inside a physical object? And how much of its meaning comes from the faith of those who choose to remember?